Thank you so much for coming today to our Kootenai County Mayor's meeting. It is October 9th, 2024. The time is 2:33 p.m. And in attendance are Commissioners Matari, Brooks, and Duncan. Are there changes to the agenda?
Yes. Would like to move item 5 to be the first item.
Okay, no problem. And then we will do public comment, and then we will go around for not announcements, but introductions. So, public comment.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
No. There you go.
Apparently there are issues with the mics. I am Jill Smith. I'm the Chief Deputy Treasurer for Kootenai County. And I realized this afternoon that there was going to be a room full of city representatives here. And I wanted to bring something to your attention prior to next year's legislative session because this impacts the county, but it also impacts your districts. Today, there was a tax cancellation meeting. The taxes being canceled were as a result of the homeowner's exemption being applied. And as of about 2 years ago, you can apply for the homeowner's exemption all year, which is wonderful, but they don't prorate the exemption to the date that you bought the house. If you buy the house December 30th, you get the benefit of that exemption for the whole year. And that's another complicated thing. But what that means is that you set your budgets based on assuming all that value would still be available, and that's how you set your levy rate. When those taxes are canceled and the value is reduced by roughly $125,000 per parcel, that's hitting you in the pocket. And we as counties have worked with the legislature for the last 2 years trying to get them to correct this because in our mind, it's not the way it should be done. Yes, you should get the benefit. You shouldn't not receive it because you bought the house after April 16th or whatever the date used to be, but it shouldn't be applied for the whole year. Just to give you an idea, so far this year, the value that's been canceled is $26,563,358. We don't know what the tax impact is yet because we haven't calculated taxes. For 2023, I don't have the tax information. It hasn't been compiled yet, and like I said, I just thought of this afternoon when I heard the number from this morning's meeting. Last year, it was $59,210,509. In 2022, it was $77,518,054. The taxes canceled were $368,979, $258,285, of which was taxing districts other than the counties. So for some of the bigger cities, it's not a huge impact. For the smaller cities, maybe it is. I just wanted to make sure you were aware this was an issue because it is the time where your legislators are going to come talk to you. And if they say, hey, is there something you want us to pay attention to this session? Maybe this is something that you're interested in. I left my business cards up with Tina, so if anyone has questions and you want to call me, please feel free. And if I can get you more information with more time, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else for public comment? All right. Then I think if we can just go around the room really quick and make introductions, because I don't know that everybody knows each other. We do have name tags, but it's still nice to hear. So, Bill, if you'll start, and then we'll...
I'm Bill Brooks. I'm one of the commissioners.
Okay, Leslie Duncan.
Bruce Matari.
Colin McElweeny.
David Callahan.
Tyrell Stevenson. Jeremy Copperthwaite. Ray Watkins.
Emily Smith, Rathdrum City Attorney.
Leon Deuce, Rathdrum.
Kurt Jarman. Stephen Roos, Mayor of Athol.
Brandy Westland, Post Falls City Council.
Warren Wilson, Deputy City Administrator for Post Falls.
Shelley Underwood, City Administrator for Post Falls.
Alan Davis Hayden.
Randy Adams, Coeur d'Alene.
Nick Evers, Coeur d'Alene.
Troy Tymason, Coeur d'Alene.
Pat Braden. I grew up in Coeur d'Alene, but I'm a civil deputy prosecutor for Kootenai County.
I'm Chad Engel with Kootenai County Public Transportation.
Okay, thank you. All right, as mentioned before, we're going to go ahead with item 5 first, and this is our impact fee discussion. And it's Teisler Bish, is it?
Tischler buys. Sorry.
Teisler Bish,
Yeah.
okay. And Colin McWeeny, please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Again, Colin McWeeny, Tischler buys Galena. Really, I'm presenting today the draft results of a revamped jail impact fee study for Kootenai County. You may remember a colleague of mine, Ann Westcott, maybe 18 months ago, came in front of you to talk about the county doing several different impact fees. Went back to the drawing board to address a couple of items, and now just hoping to move forward with an impact fee for jails. And I do have handful of sort of impact fee 101 information. A lot of you have impact fees, but wanted to sort of refresh everyone on what they are, what they aren't, and then go through some of our analysis, answer any questions you may have. We're sort of in the input stage of this study, so making sure we address any of the questions or concerns that you may have. So impact fees, these are one-time payments that new growth pays to offset their new demand on your infrastructure. It's collected at the building permit issuance, and so it's really on those new subdivisions, new businesses that are bringing in new demand on roads and utilities, in this case, the jail system. We have to provide a nexus study, this big report showing 3 things: the need, benefit, and proportionality. Need, we do that by having a CIP, capital improvement plan, that has a growth-related element to it. So we're growing, and we have capital plans to address that growth. We have to show benefit. The jail, for example, countywide facility expansion there will benefit all new folks in the county. Also, if we were looking at a large geography like Kootenai County, but more specific, maybe the roadway impact fee or park impact fee, we might have different service areas to ensure that people that pay the fee receive a benefit from those dollars. And lastly, the program and the study has to be proportionate. So you see, I know Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene, you guys have different land uses in your fee schedules because different development types have different demands. So you're going to see single family and multifamily, but also retail, office, and industrial, because all of those have different proportionate demand, and we need to make sure that the fee sort of is in line with that. So this revenue source is strictly for new capacity in infrastructure. So it can't go to maintenance, can't go to repairs, can't go to operating costs like personnel. If you have a leaky roof, you can't use impact fees. It's really expanding infrastructure to accommodate those new people that have come into your community and providing that benefit. You can, if you've issued debt, let's say, for oversizing a facility, you can actually use impact fees to service that debt. But again, it has to be a growth-related project, not addressing current deficiencies. We have some parameters we have to play within in Idaho. These dollars are kept separately in special revenue funds, so they shouldn't be intermixed with your general tax dollars. Has to be spent within 8 years. The law does say 11 years in extraordinary circumstances, but we really want to make sure that the communities that are collecting impact fees are using those dollars in a timely fashion, that we're just not sort of stockpiling cash and don't have any plans for that. We rely on the capital improvement plan to sort of guide those decisions. We have to have an advisory committee, a development impact fee advisory committee, a DFAC, and that's made up of at least 5 residents of the jurisdiction. 2 at least have to be within the development community, and they review these studies, provide input, especially on our growth assumptions, because they kind of have the boots on the ground of understanding what development's looking like. Address any concerns when we're thinking about more fees and costs from a construction standpoint, and then they provide recommendations to planning and zoning, and then eventually county commission or city council. These studies have to be updated every 5 years. And there's a handful of infrastructure categories we can collect for. That's utilities, roads, parks and recreation, and then public safety, like law enforcement, fire, EMS, and jails. Any questions on sort of impact fee fundamentals there? Okay. Growth projections. So this is countywide. This is a countywide study. So we're looking at growth not just in the unincorporated areas, but within the towns. Overall, in the last 5 years, we've seen an average of about 2,200 new homes, almost 2,300 more homes every year. Big chunk of that being single family, but we're also seeing a good bit of multifamily development occur. And we're using those sort of building trends to project out growth for the next 10 years. We also rely on KMPO, Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization, if I got that right. Yes. Their projections as well, because they have boots on the ground to understand other development pipeline information. But you'll see here are residential projections, and we have permanent housing population, but also two other population types, because you're a resort community, so there's peak times where you kind of swell in demand and your infrastructure is actually scaled to that peak time. And so we have seasonal housing population and also your overnight visitors. So when we're thinking about overall demand, it's not the folks that live here 365, 24/7. It's those that are coming in here seasonally, but also folks that are staying overnight as well. So that population, permanent population, almost 193,000. But if we include those other populations, that's 224,000 today. Projecting that out by 60,000 new residents, or 27% increase over the next 10 years. So it's certainly still growing and certainly needing new infrastructure to accommodate that growth. And I think I had was 85% of that growth occurring within the city. So only 15% of this being in the unincorporated areas. And that's really driving home the point of the need for cities to be on board with these county impact fees, because this is a county-wide facility and they would not be able to recoup or capture all that revenue needed to expand a jail without city cooperation. We also have job projections using Idaho Department of Labor and KMPO here as well. We have about 71,000 jobs today countywide. That's going to grow by 15% in the next 10 years, or 10,000 new jobs. A lot of that being retail, but institutional, like healthcare and education growing. Good bit of industrial and some office jobs as well. So just sort of walking our way through, the methodology that we take here is called incremental expansion approach. And it's really one of the more conservative approaches when we're thinking impact fees, because all we do is look at today's level of service, facility level of service, like square footage of the jail, compare that to current population, bring that into dollars using current construction costs and the CIP costs. And we say, hey, this maximum supportable fee amount really represents in dollars that new demand per person or per home to expand our infrastructure at today's levels into the future. So everyone essentially will be paying to keep up with the pace of growth. And you can see kind of the sort of illustration of the calculations where you have that level of service, the cost of construction, demand indicators going back to the proportionality of the fee, so number of people per home or vehicle trips for commercial development. Importantly, our study gets a maximum supportable impact fee. You can certainly adopt lower than that, but not higher. You know, when we put out these studies, and if you adopt lower than the max, and we've set the max to today's level of service, and you adopt less than that, you're essentially, two things will happen. Either you're lowering levels of service because you don't have revenues, or you have to raise additional revenues to fill that gap when you're not adopting 100% of the max. Just some revisions since the 2022 study. Certainly there's been inflation. So we were using a 900 square foot construction cost in 2022, and that's grown by 26% just within the last couple of years. Doing a little bit more analysis on demand from a residential and non-residential perspective. We incorporated that peak population, and then also the fee. The first iteration just had a uniform residential fee and a uniform non-residential fee, but we're breaking that out of those single family versus multifamily, but then retail, office, and industrial. To the jail today, the total capacity is 450 beds or inmates. Now, operational capacity is 80% of that because, there's some inmates that we just have to exclude from other populations. And so that's a common standard across the state and the country where operational capacity is only 80% of total capacity. So that 451 goes to 360 beds. And then we looked at the inmate population since 2019, and the average has been over 400 in that time period. So well over the operational capacity. Almost 80% of the time, they're over operational capacity, and they're actually 1 in 4 months since 2019, they've been over total capacity. So certainly, basically painting the picture here is, hey, there's capacity needs as our community continues to grow that we need to expand our jail to accommodate that growth. One thing I don't have on here, but I was just looking at it, is actually the inmate population was about maybe 300 in 2014, and now it's grown by about 100 new inmates, about 30% increase, and also our population has grown by about 30% in the same time period. So I'm not illustrating it here, but there's a correlation between population growth and inmates. Yeah.
All of those approximately 400 inmates, how many of them at one time are transitory, meaning they don't belong here, they're just holding there until they go somewhere else, or they need to go somewhere else?
That's a good question. I don't have hard numbers to that, but there's a couple different populations in the jail, and one being federal inmates. And so we actually looked at that, and we take a kind of a snapshot in time, but also this is a pattern that all the federal inmates actually committed those crimes in Kootenai County. So they're sort of Kootenai County related. But I don't think we had the number of folks that aren't Kootenai County residents, but they still committed a crime, in Kootenai County, and that's why they're being held here.
That's because I'm curious if the inmate population is a causation by our increased population, or is the county offering these services to other law enforcement agencies, which is then artificially driving up?
Yeah, Mayor Davis, in the summertime in the past, you could see as much as 50% were not from here inside the jail. It used to be very seasonal. Now it's all year long. And we have actually hit 550 inmates at a point. So we're getting to the point where, obviously the jail does need to expand. And, because we're a resort town, you're just going to get a lot of people who end up there. And especially because we're close to Spokane, you're going to get a lot of people who are not necessarily from here, and certainly not homeowners. They would comprise the smallest percentage, I would say, of people who go through the jail.
I'll add to that. And anytime you speak, if you don't mind pushing your little button so the people watching online can't hear if the button's not pushed. I think you're saying like the state typically has 60 to 100 people a day in our jail that they need to pick up. So is that kind of what your question was?
Yeah, I was just trying to determine how much of it is self-induced because we're offering a service that wasn't there before, as opposed to how much of it is because of this growth, because it's easy to paint one thing and it might be something else.
Right, and so the state, that's not necessarily a service that we can affect. It's not something that we're voluntarily doing. They don't have beds either, and so we're just kind of at their mercy. But yes, a federal contract or marshal's contract or something like that I believe we have more flexibility in. But
Yes.
That's a lower population than the state population.
Yeah, and to add some more color too, you'll see dips in averages throughout the year, especially, COVID. There was actually, although a trend of, increasing inmate population, it actually dipped in 2020 for reasons. And there's all those, other sort of judicial changes that occur. But overall, there's this consistent trend of growing population, and also the commercial side as well. Is that so? That's why we have a retail impact fee, because there are folks that are maybe not in Kootenai County, but the business is here, and so that's what's driving some of that demand. Just to go into the analysis a little bit, We use what's called functional population to differentiate residential and non-residential demand countywide. And we essentially look at hours in the day and how people spend those hours. So if you're a resident but non-working, 24 of your hours of the day are attributed to residential purposes. If you don't live in Kootenai County but you work in Kootenai County, then we have 8 of those hours that are attributed to non-residential demand. And so we get a 82% sort of portion that's residential demand and 18% that's non-residential demand. Level of service, so again, this is facility level of service of the jail today. What's in the ground is 121,000 square feet. Current value is about $140 million. Then we see that 18% split. On the residential side, let's say, that's about 100,000 square feet of the jail is attributed to residents of Kootenai County. And so that 99,000 square feet is compared to the 224,000 peak population to get current facility level service of 445 square feet per 1,000 residents. Then based on the CIP in a construction cost estimate for jail, or the pod expansion, we had $1,141 per square foot to construct a new pod. Combining level of service and construction costs gets us capital cost per person of $508, or $111 per vehicle trip. So really bringing that demand into dollars. And so every new person that moves into Kootenai County, really that dollar demand and impact is $508 per person on just the jail. We say today's level of service is X, you're going to grow by Y, and so to keep pace at today's levels of service and growth, we would want to see a CIP that has at least 30,000 new square feet of jail facility space to a tune of $34 million. And we have just that. So this is the CIP from the Sheriff's Office. We have an existing project addressing existing needs, and so that's actually not growth related. There's 8,000 square feet there, about $10 million. Again, so the current need, so we're not using, we can't use impact fees for that, but we do have 2 additional pods and admin space. Along with that is sort of the peripheral ancillary needs like kitchen, medical, and storage expansion of another 20,000 square feet. So we have about $35 million that's impact fee eligible, and the CIP also justifies collecting at today's level of service because we're showing the benefit here through the plan. Importantly, though, is we can't, a big sort of check mark with these impact fee studies is we can typically only charge today's level of service to new growth. We can't essentially improve our levels of service through collecting an impact fee because that'd be overburdening growth. We can only really put in place the program that represents the investment that the community has made already. And so we can't actually collect the 35 million or 40,000 square feet that's in the CIP. We have to stick with today's levels of service. Nearly 35, I mean, it's actually only 34 million. But importantly, again, we can only collect for today's level of service, not elevate levels of service. So lastly, here's the fee schedule. So another small element is we can actually collect for the impact fee study itself. So that was, 79 cents per person, but helps just alleviate some of that pressure off of the general fund. So we get $509 per person, or $111 for a vehicle trip. Then on the right-hand side is the actual fee schedule. So you have residential, single-family, multifamily. Kootenai County averages 2.66 people in a single-family home. So 2.66 times cost per person gets our max supportable for a single-family home of $1,353. Multifamily, slightly lower number of people. That's $1,000 per unit, and so that would be if you built a 20-unit apartment building, you paid 20x that amount. And then on the commercial side, we have retail, office, industrial, institutional. Retail being the highest, about $1,500 per 1,000 square feet of new retail space, down to $271 for industrial. And then we can actually parcel out lodging here, and that's about $1,000 per hotel room. And we say, hey, maximum supportable fee amounts of this, you're going to grow by this, what's the projected revenue? And we get $34 million, which was what we're trying to solve for, is that growth-related capital cost for new jail expansion. Importantly, though, this is representing if the jail impact fee, county jail impact fee, is collected within the cities, all the cities, because that represents about 85% of growth and revenue. So we're hoping to get some partnerships here with the cities to make sure that this CIP is made whole. Lastly, the jail impact fees are being collected in several other counties in Idaho. Elmore and Payette, just above Kootenai County, and then Ada County actually being less, but they have a much bigger population base, and so those costs can get spread out a little bit further. So kind of sitting right in the middle. And those studies were just completed earlier last year, and so they're still going through the adoption process, but sort of falling, right where we were expecting. So that's all I had to present. Certainly here for any questions or discussion.
If it's okay, I'd like to give everyone just a little bit of a background as to how we got here. This process actually started a little over a year ago, and we used the old impact study as a discussion point. And I'm going to pick on you a little bit, Emily, because quite frankly, if it wasn't for you to look at it and kind of scrutinize it, we wouldn't be where we are right now. The fact is that the methodology just didn't really hold water. And that's part of the reason why we went back to the drawing board and retained Collins' firm to come up with a new methodology. Now, while I realize that the numbers have increased a lot, to put this into perspective, the impact fee, the old methodology came out to about $550 per unit and a certain penny amount per square foot of commercial space. And assuming a 2/3 residential, 1/3 commercial space blend, in order for us to generate, I believe it was $12 million in impact fee, we needed to add 18,000 more homes and 21 million square feet of commercial space, which adds up to over 100 supercenter Walmarts in Kootenai County to generate that kind of impact fee for a jail expansion. I don't think anyone here wants to see 18,000 more homes and 100 more supercenter Walmarts in the county in order to earn enough impact fee to pay for a jail expansion. And so while the number seems like a lot more, and it is, the reality is it's much more realistic for the growth trajectory that we can expect to see in this county. And so that's why Colin and his firm put this together. We asked that he be here so that he can answer any questions that you might have related to this new methodology and impact, for the impact fee. So please take advantage of it. We've done a fair amount of work before today, even as recently as yesterday, to kind of go over some of the concerns. I know that along with Emily, there were some folks from other cities that had looked at this prior, and I think it's fair to say that we've addressed most of the issues and that we should have something that, with the next step is a public hearing, after that we could proceed with attempting to try to collect it. And so this is your chance. Ask your questions, or forever hold your peace, but ask your questions if you have some, please.
Formula to slow growth down. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, we changed the formula, the methodology. So one, it could pass legal scrutiny.
Okay.
And two, would be more reflective of a traditional, the growth trajectory that we have right now in this community. Like I said, right now, prior, the old methodology, in order to generate $12 million in fees, we would need 18,000 more homes and 21 million square feet of commercial space at a 2/3, 1/3 blend to accumulate $12 million for the next jail expansion, which $12 million won't get you very much, because we're looking at $9 million to complete some existing jail pod shells. So what this really is it's now looking at what is a more realistic projection of growth in Kootenai County based upon KMPO's numbers, and then assuming, using today as your baseline for the level of service that's being provided right now with the jail, that in order to meet the population growth, we would need to generate, 35 million? Mm-hmm. For the next jail expansion, and then breaking that down by the population growth is where the numbers came from as far as residential unit, commercial unit, and things like that, retail space.
And you can't borrow against future impact fees, is that correct?
Well, you can borrow and then use the impact fee to pay it off.
Okay.
And that's one of the challenges, is that under the old methodology, we would have to have those 18,000 homes built and 21 million square feet built within 8 years. And that's really the Achilles heel of this whole piece of legislation, is that you can start collecting the fee, but if you don't use it within 8 years, you have to start giving it back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
With this brief, is there an ask here? Are you asking the cities to adopt anything at this point?
I'm sorry, ask the question again.
I'm asking if, with this brief, is there an ask here? Is there any action item that you're requesting of the cities at this point?
Well, I think the next step is that we have a public hearing on this. And then after that, the ask would be, would the city collect this fee for us when you issue the building permit? Because the county is reliant on the cities to do that, in essence.
And that would be through execution of an intergovernmental agreement between the county and each city, similar to the way the fire districts and Kootenai County EMS did with the cities when their impact fees were passed.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen large increase in construction costs. Are you able to incorporate that into the 10-year plan with an index? I mean, you're up 25% in a couple years. I hope it does not continue at that level, but we'll be way off if it was to escalate at that level.
Yeah. It would be said in the ordinance, but you can put in this inflationary factor, like you said, and typically it is still sort of supervised, overseen by the advisory committee, and so they'll meet, if it's June 1st every year, and then they would review this. There's a couple out there, but there's ENR, Engineering News Record, Construction Cost Index, basically looks at the cost of like cement and timber and metals, and then construction costs, labor construction costs, to just get that index, and that could be included in the ordinance.
So just to have a follow-up, so if this went into place and the cities agreed to it, could we hold that money for a period of time and then turn it over to the county, or anything on the remuneration for processing that? We have a relationship with EMS that gives us a little bit of an incentive to work through that paperwork.
Well, Well, typically, through the IGA, you would hold it. So generally speaking, a month or a quarter, but it should be kept in an escrow account, specific to this program here. Yeah.
Thank you.
When will we expect to see the draft intergovernmental agreement?
Oh, I'm sure a couple months from now. Yeah.
Shouldn't take very long. We already have, the fire and EMS intergovernmental agreements as a go-by for these, so I don't think it'd take too awfully much to draft those and circulate them to the cities for comment, any changes that need to be made.
Anyone else?
How are other counties and cities in Idaho handling this? Are there other counties that have this set up with cities, and is this a common thing in the state?
Oh, yeah, very much so. Yeah, I mean, I did a quick introduction, but I had a table at my first slide that showed all the communities that we've worked with. And I think it's to the tune of 80 or 90 now, throughout just the state of Idaho. And it's fire districts and EMS districts, but also cities have their own impact fees, and counties are starting to do that. And they have to go through the same process because it's, the tricky thing with impact fees is they're collected at building permit issuance. And so like the fire districts, they actually have to go to every city and county and go through this whole rigmarole to get the program put together. So it's a lengthy process, but yeah, that's what we have to do in Idaho. Yeah.
Great. And a question on methodology. I think you said 82% of the demand is from residential, and it looks like you were getting that number by taking basically the number of hours spent in the county and then dividing that out. But that's counting all hours kind of equally. And as Commissioner Matari pointed out, homeowners within the county are likely to consume a smaller slice of jail space than perhaps other types of housing. Is it necessary for us to kind of break that out in a little more detail to find out what the impact really is of different types of housing?
So that's a great question, and we went down that road because it all has to be data backed, right? And so we I think we probably could have certain ideas in our mind of what that might look like, but we unfortunately can't just kind of like cherry pick certain things. But you can. So what we looked at is using police, the sheriff, and all the police departments, their CAD systems or sort of dispatch reporting systems, and if they were capturing the location of calls, like addresses, or if it's a single family or multifamily or bar or restaurant, we could then use that data to apportion out that fee. Unfortunately, that data is not being collected, so we couldn't use that data point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Colin, for coming out.
Yeah,
really
sure.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, and Colin has a flight to catch, so if
Yes,
you've
yeah,
got
no,
other questions
yeah.
that come up later, just let us know and we can get those answered for you.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time.
All right, we'll move on to item 1, which is areas of city impact. And we've got our Director of Community Development, David Callahan, as well as Commissioner Matari to kind of speak to this. So, David, you want to start us?
Thank you, Chair Duncan. Good afternoon, everyone. For our YouTube public, I should mention what an ACI, or Area of City Impact, is. And that is an intergovernmental agreement between, in this case, the county and all of its cities. ACIs are required by law and have been, if I remember right, since '97. And we have ACIs with most all of our cities. And the most important takeaway for the current ACIs is that they're required by law if any city wants to annex. So you shouldn't be annexing without an ACI. That's the impetus behind it. And the fact that it's good planning practice for cities and counties to work nicely together in the sandbox, if you will, so that what develops in the county is annexable for you in the cities. So that's what an ACI is in a nutshell. The state legislature this last year changed the state law in a meaningful way. And the foretelling of that is the name of it is now AI instead of area of city impact. It's now area of impact. And expressly in the first few paragraphs of the legislation, the legislators decided to earmark that county regulations shall prevail now, not city regulations. That sets the stage for all of this. Setting that aside, I'm perfectly willing, since this must be a negotiated process, I'm perfectly willing for there to be some quid pro quo. The kind of thing that comes to my mind is that in the new ACIs, we could offer up, we the county, things like we won't approve rezonings, conditional use permits, that sort of thing, without the express written consent of the cities within the ACI area, or now AI area. So I say that just to set the stage that this must be a negotiated process. We are perfectly willing to listen to what you need and work with you on that. The next most important thing is we need to get started pretty quickly because the legislation requires that we be done within, I believe it's the end of next year. And so my staff, in this case Ben Tarbuttons, right behind Mayor Davis, has done a draft of what the ACIs could look like. It's just a boilerplate starting point. And with your consent, mayors, I'd like to email this out to you, whoever you tell me you want this to go to, your city managers, whoever it is on my level and staff, or just you, whatever you want. Just please let me know. And I can get that draft out to you in the next few days. So I've got my business cards. I'm available. Please let me know how you'd like to arrange that. Again, this is just a draft as a starting point so we can get things rolling. And that's really all I have unless you have questions on that topic.
Any questions?
And they should they should look fairly familiar because they're based on the existing ACI agreements. So, and again, as a starting point, not anywhere near a final product.
If the cities come to the county with an agreed upon ACI map, is that something the county is going to be willing to accept? Or is there going to end up being like further negotiation or editing of that?
Well, that's a political decision. I won't speak to that part, but I will say the starting point is the state has set certain standards we must meet. Mm-hmm. Like you may recall, we can't have more than 2 miles beyond the city limits. Right.
Right, yeah, the factors have definitely changed, but I think as long as they're, meet those, as long as those factors are met, I don't see why we wouldn't at least give it serious consideration.
Right.
Any other questions on the ACI or the AI process now? Not to be confused with the other AI that we deal with.
Yes, you've said that we are on a tight time frame. What do you have a request from the cities as to when we need to respond to this proposal?
As soon as possible. I think, it's highly dependent on the city. Some cities, I imagine Coeur d'Alene will be one of our more involved discussions because we have a lot of growth right next to the city of Coeur d'Alene. But I'm certainly willing to be as reasonable as we possibly can. I'm willing to triage these things. I've told the mayor of Dalton Gardens we would knock theirs out first just because it ought to be pretty quick and simple, for instance.
So the next couple weeks.
That would be nice.
So one quick
Let's work
question.
with 2 weeks.
The statute contemplates where the cities are abutting each other, that the cities would get together and negotiate where there are concerns about overlap. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that before we start adopting individual ACIs for cities that might be abutting another city, that those cities haven't had a chance to talk about what their boundaries should look like, that we're not putting the cart before the horse.
Right, and that's actually expressed in the statute too. So certainly it's one of the major things that we'll have to look at, especially given Post Falls, Rathdrum, and Hayden, to some extent Coeur d'Alene as well, and even Hutter, because that's kind of where all the ACIs meet, currently.
I apologize if I missed it. What's the vehicle by which this compromise happens? Are we planning a future workshop where the cities come in with the counties, or are you leaving up to the cities just to call each other and say, let's get lunch?
I'm open to suggestions. What's your pleasure? I can be the pivot point if you'd like and help coordinate some of this.
Well, would it be easier if we just agreed, at least today, that you send an email out to all of your contemporaries? And at least that way, the ball starts to roll here, and there can be some follow-up with that.
That would make my life easier.
Is that something that we can agree on, at least to start the process with the planning departments?
That sounds like...
You're not getting a no.
That sounds like a plan. Well, we'll go with that then. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on that topic? All right, move on to the comprehensive plan discussion. And Bruce, did you want to lead this one?
Yes. So many of you know that we are in the process of updating our comprehensive plan. And, you know, one of the ideas, and it was brought up in our last mayor's meeting. It's nice to see we have 3 biannual meetings now, and I look forward to having many more in the future. That we could look at possibly linking our comp plans, because the cities and the county, they operate mutually exclusive, and this place is growing, and it seems like it would be kind of nice if we started maybe coordinating a little bit to identify what this community is going to look like when we grow up, and it's happening fast. And so Director Callahan actually has some numbers, because we're and information related to what we've discovered with the beginning process of our comp plan. And I felt that it would be important if he shared that, and maybe even talk a little bit about why we have an opportunity today to actually do something before this place grows and it'll be too late to make changes.
Thank you. Commissioner, I handed out before the meeting this community profile update that our consultant has done. I didn't have enough for everyone at the table to have a copy, but now I do have. So if you'd like a copy before you go, just swing by. But this is a data update of our current county comprehensive plan, because we had, in 2020, we had done a goals, objectives, policy update. And we told everyone then we would backfill with data update, which we have now done. The next step for us would be to take this to our plan commission and our county commissioners to see if they're willing to adopt the update data. And then the following step would be to go public with it and start to tease out from this data what meaningful changes need to be made to our goals, objectives, and policies. But as part of all that process, I'm hopeful that you all agree that now would be a good time to at least dialogue and discuss and think about how our respective comprehensive plans might integrate and overlap. Because as Commissioner Matari said, at the moment, to my knowledge, at least I know, speaking from the county plan, we don't have anything about city plans in our comp plan. And I'd like to rectify that. And I hope you feel the same way and would be willing to embrace, where it's useful and meaningful, policies in your plans that coordinate with ours. And all for good planning practice. I think by way of quick example, on about a third of the way into this update, it's, if you have 2020 vision, page 14 at the bottom here, or 9 physical pages in, there's this population pyramid. And what to me is very telling, this is for the county, what's very telling about this is it's what planners call a flat pyramid, meaning that there's not nearly enough breadth at the bottom of this pyramid to deal with all the old people like me at the top. That has serious ramifications, you probably know, economically, labor-wise, marketplace, even for public services, and how the county should accommodate that. And currently, our comprehensive plan doesn't factor in the fact of a flat pyramid. So that's the kind of meaningful change we need to address in this update. I hope that's a useful explanation. So that's where we are in our comp plan data update at the moment.
And so the ask would be that perhaps in a follow-up email or in the same email to your planning directors, if we could ask for participation and working together as we update our comp plan to see where we can actually kind of find commonality. So if that's something that's okay with everyone in this room, we can include that either in a separate email or in the same email and begin that dialogue, that process. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Commissioners, I know that with the city of Rathdrum, we've already got direction for our staff to be working on updates to our comprehensive plan in this next fiscal year. And so that it's going to be something that we're going to be looking at quite extensively over the next, say, 8 to 9 months. So just as a FYI, I think as we look at each other's stuff, I know that our council will want to make their choices, but we can kind of compare notes, to put it that way. How's that? And kind of see where we're at.
Sounds like good timing.
Finished ours in the last year or so, and we had to spend money on it. Back in the old days, we did it ourselves. The state said you have to cover this, this, and this, and make it feel good. So is that the same rules you guys got to pay by? You have to pay to play, kind of? Pay to play?
Yes.
Okay. So you're budgeted for it and all that, and you're just looking for input?
Yes, sir.
Okay. No offense.
We'll figure out how to fund our stuff, but we dearly want to coordinate for good planning practice with you all.
Thank you.
Is the goal with the coordination more to make sure that we're all working from the same data and the same set of facts? Or is it to go further and try to coordinate policies and how we're kind of responding to those facts within the individual cities?
My view is yes and yes. But the second part of your statement is a political question. I'll defer to the county commissioners.
Any other questions, comments? So would it be safe to say it's we could have our Director Callahan send an email out and start communicating and working with your planning departments? Excellent.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right, is that it for the comp plan? All
Yes.
right, now we can move on to our transit presentation with Chad Engel.
All right, good afternoon, and I thank you for allowing me to come and give a presentation today on public transportation here within Kootenai County. I'm just excited to be able to present and provide some information. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get started with a little bit of a video here on public transportation in our area.
I love meeting new people about the bus and riding, knowing most of the drivers. They know me by name, I know them, and I like to give them a hard time.
The bus is a door-to-door service that I use to go to the Croc Center, go to the mall, to work. If I wasn't able to use the door-to-door service, I wouldn't be able to get around at all.
My name is David Waterhouse. Kootenai County Public Transportation operates under the name CityLink. We have 3 fixed route bus systems. We also have a paratransit service. collectively, amongst all of our services, in June of 2024, we gave just a little over 20,000 rides to the general public. Our ridership varies from teens to seniors and everybody in between, everybody in all different walks of life.
My name's Melissa Joy Hayton, and I rode the bus for almost 10 years. I suddenly lost my eyesight. The doctor said I will never be able to see properly again. I went to the blind community. They gave me a cane, taught me how to use that. I heard about paratransit. It actually made it possible for me to not only be able to get places, but have self-assurance that I can still carry on. It just let me have a life. Just as quick as it left, it came that quickly. And so I went to the eye doctor, and he told me, he said, you could drive again. And I just sat in his office and I cried. Now I get to drive my grandchildren. We do a bucket list once a week, and I appreciate every single day. But yet, without this bus system, it would have been a whole different life.
The Special Needs Program in the Public School, Project Search, is a huge supporter and huge user of CityLink.
I'm one of the instructors for the Project Search program in Coeur d'Alene, and it's a vocational program for students with disabilities, and they learn job skills at the hospital and independent living skills, and a huge part of that is how to use CityLink.
And then it gives them that freedom that I keep talking about, that you see them on days off and you'll see them on weekends.
You know, adults with disabilities in the past have been really limited in our community, and CityLink really puts those barriers down.
I love to see people when they get a new job, or, you know, just picking people up a little bit, or handicapped, gaining more independence. It's very rewarding. I purposely got my CDL to come work here. There was a time in my life where I relied on the CityLink. Because of CityLink, I was able to get where I needed to go to get to a better place, and I love this job.
Public transit gives everybody the opportunity to get where they need to go. We follow all of the same rules and regulations that all public transit does, but we're on a smaller level, that when somebody calls, you do recognize their name on the phone. And when they call and say, "Hi, this is Jesse," you know exactly who it is. What feels like a personalized service, it's really important to people, and it makes them feel valued, and it makes them feel important, that, you know, somebody recognizes them and knows their needs. Taking a trip down to a transit center and just seeing how many people, how many different people fully depend on it every day, it will change your mind about public transit.
So just to give you a little bit of information on public transit, we have some different services: our fixed route, our paratransit, and our ring-a-ride programs. Our fixed route, as we talked about in the video, has 3 routes that run throughout Kootenai County. They go up into Hayden, they go downtown Coeur d'Alene, and out into Post Falls. So we service Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Hayden, Dalton Gardens, and Hutter within those routes. We have 81 bus stops that are contained within the system, and it just makes it so that it ensures our community members can easily access the services that they need. It's not working, Jonathan. Oh, there. All right, so as part of the Federal Transit Administration requirements for providing fixed route services, we are also required to offer ADA paratransit services for individuals with ADA eligible functional limitations. This prevents them from using the fixed route buses. Our paratransit service provides a curb-to-curb transportation within 3/4 mile of our fixed route bus stops. So there's a common misconception that paratransit is exclusively for medical transportation or it's a personalized service. In reality, it is public transportation, and it's an option designated to enhance mobility for those eligible riders, and it operates under the same guidelines as our fixed route services. So the Ring a Ride is considered a demand response service and was established to provide essential transportation services to seniors residing outside of that 3/4 mile area surrounding our fixed routes. This service brings seniors into designated service area, allowing them access to vital resources such as shopping, medical care, and much more. So each eligible individual can utilize up to 8 round trips per month. This service is particularly beneficial for those facing mobility challenges or for whom transportation options are insufficient, inappropriate, or unavailable. So this is a service map of the area that we transport within. We have our fixed routes marked up there in the blue, red, and green. And there's the 3/4 mile of the paratransit indicated around it, kind of in that amber color. And then in the green area highlighted, the designated zones served by the Ring a Ride services. So a key objective of our strategic service plan that we're currently working on is to explore various options for improving services to meet current and future ridership demands. To facilitate this, we are organizing ride-alongs, which most should have already gotten that email and hopefully are able to participate in. So these ride-alongs are with representatives from each jurisdiction along with their respective routes. These ride-alongs provide an excellent opportunity to gain firsthand insight to our transit services and observe the daily operations and then engage meaningful discussion about enhancing public transportation access for our community. And that's exactly what we're trying to get with this strategic service plan and these ride-alongs. So our intelligent transportation system, or ITS, it plays a crucial role in enhancing public transportation by improving efficiency, safety, and the overall user experience to the program. The ITS provides real-time information on arrivals and delays, and it enables passengers to plan their journeys more effectively. So we currently partner with Passio Technologies to implement our ITS, which includes a real-time app, a user-friendly website, and integration with Apple and Google Maps so that we can streamline trip planning for our riders. Additionally, data collected from the ITS allows us to make informed decisions regarding resource allocation and service planning. Overall, the ITS transforms public transportation into a more reliable, convenient option for all users. As the recipient of Federal Transit Administration funds, Kootenai County is tasked with conducting oversight activities, technical inspections, and site visits to ensure that subrecipients and contractors comply with regulatory and statutory requirements. So Kootenai County Public Transportation collaborates with various partners to enhance service delivery and securing funding, focusing on planning, network design, and bus stop maintenance and transportation services. Public involvement is essential for prioritizing transportation needs, which helps us strengthen communities and improve mobility for all residents. Kootenai County Public Transportation reports to the Federal Transit Administration, the Idaho Transportation Department, the Board of County Commissioners, the Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Coeur d'Alene Tribe, and local jurisdictions. So Idaho is one of the few states that does not allocate state funds for public transportation. As a result, we depend heavily on partnerships with local jurisdictions, Kootenai County, and key stakeholders, including the Coeur d'Alene Tribe, to sustain and enhance our transit services. Kootenai County Public Transportation is primarily funded through federal grants awarded by the Federal Transit Administration and the Idaho Transportation Department. And then match funds are provided by Kootenai County and participating cities, along with contributions from partners such as the Coeur d'Alene Tribe, Kootenai Health, and the Area Agency on Aging. Currently, right now, the Area Agency on Aging, it does not for this year have any funding available for those match funds, but in years past they have. And we still do have a contract with them, so if funds do become available, then those match funds will come about as well. So that's just a brief overview on public transportation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have regarding any information.
So it's all pretty much in the. Most of this is all in the concentrated populated areas.
Correct.
Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, Dalton. What about Rathdrum? What about Spirit Lake? What about out in the Tules? You know, is there no service planned or is it not justified? How would you perceive that?
So the way that public transportation is set up is it's an urbanized zone. And so the reason the system is set up the way that it is just because of that urbanized zoning and the way that it was through the census and how that was put into place. So Rathdrum was still not included in that urbanized zoning in the recent census. So to provide transportation out to Rathdrum, it would take different funding sources to be able to do that because they're considered rural. So in our regard for serving public transportation. And so it would just be different funding sources that we have to use to get out there in order to provide services.
So different money is new money.
It would be different money, however that comes about. Either there's new grants or local contributions that would kick into that. Yes.
Thank you.
How many total buses are there? Is there just one per route, or?
So we're required to have buses on hand so that we can't miss a run or miss anything just because of a mechanical failure. So currently we have 7 fixed route buses so that we have buses in line in case something was to happen for the fixed route services. And we have 14 paratransit buses. Part of the paratransit buses we use for Kootenai County, and part of it is for Kootenai Health as well. And so we just have those backup buses for that as well.
Chad, thank you for the presentation. Public transit is very important. Would you be able to brag on the partnerships that you have that don't exist across this great U.S. with our friends at the Tribe? I mean, Kootenai Health has stepped up. There's advantages to doing this, but is there another system where the city's contribution from the city of Coeur d'Alene is like $104,000? I go back like 25 years and we're spending like $50,000 back then. So if I took any inflationary number to that, we're paying less today than we did back then. And you said there's approximately 200,000 rides per year. There was not that way back when. So I'd like to hear you comment on how these partnerships make this go.
So just a correction on that. It is 100,000, over 100,000 rides that we provide each year. Correct, yes. So it is not very common throughout the nation to see the partnerships that we have and the ability that we have to leverage those in-kind funds that we do in order to draw on federal funds the way that we have been able to do. So we are very unique. And there has been many instances in the past where they have looked to us at Federal Transit Administration to see where other areas can do the same thing that we're doing. Most areas do not partner with a hospital. They don't partner with a tribe in the local area. So they are gaining funds just from the local jurisdictions and from the counties. And so it's really, as Troy pointed out, a unique situation where we have some great partnerships that we're able to utilize these federal funds with minimal contribution from the cities and from the county in order to utilize all the federal funds that we do in order to continue operations of the public transportation system.
Well, now you got into numbers, so thank you. What is your budget on an annual basis? How much comes from rough numbers from the cities and the county, just to give us a drop down into the next item on the agenda, please?
So our budget changes year to year just depending on our capital investments that we have to do for buses. So we don't have to purchase buses every year, but kind of an average, you're looking $2.5 million for our budget for operations and capital. As far as contributions, we have, so next year for fiscal year 25, our proposed contribution from the city of Coeur d'Alene would be $104,298. Post Falls is $41,624. The city of Hayden would be $13,037. And Dalton Gardens would be $3,237. And Hutter would be $183. With Kootenai County, fiscal year 25, they have budgeted a little over $64,000 for public transportation. And then, like I talked about with the Area Agency on Aging, unfortunately, they didn't have funding this time to be able to do that. And then the Coeur d'Alene Tribe, on average, they provide $250,000 plus in kind contribution for the services.
Any additional questions? Okay. Then we'll go on to item 4, Transit Joint Powers Agreement. Commissioner Matari.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the presentation, Chad. Really, the idea for this was I'm a member on the board of KMPO. And many of you have a say as to what happens in this community with respect to the roads and transportation. And it just seems like after being a commissioner here for coming up on finishing my second year, there hasn't really been any discussions from the cities about, transportation, the future of it, and so forth. And so I spoke with a couple of cities and just asked, would you have an appetite to have a discussion about looking into a joint powers agreement for the CityLink, because the cities are largely the biggest beneficiaries of it, and yet it's the county commissioners that run it. And so a draft, and I mean a draft, was distributed to the mayors as just a baseline starting point discussion. It's not what it is. It's really just a place to start from. It makes it easier when you have something you can start from, as opposed to just trying to come up with something from scratch. So it really is just an ask today. Would the cities have an appetite at looking at developing a joint powers arrangement to manage CityLink?
I'm willing to continue to contribute, but I need to look at that in more detail. I'd rather just
Okay. Anybody else?
Are you looking to just partner with the joint powers agreement just for the jurisdictions that are being served by CityLink currently?
Or those who want to be served?
So, I mean, to expand your service area, it sounds like it's defined by something else. That's you don't have the ability to provide service to Spirit Lake, for instance, or Athol.
Well, it could be provided if additional funding was put on the table. So, like Chad mentioned.
And your guys' system is a fare free?
It's free. There is no fare.
Just out of curiosity, the question that comes to mind is what's failing now that warrants the cities to jump in when the county, as the umbrella is essentially entering into a JPA, so to speak, not necessarily, regarding our contributions in the organization run through this body. I'm trying to figure out what's not working about that. That would warrant a discussion about this now.
I don't think it's a matter of something that's not working as much as it's a matter of you're 2 commissioners away of connecting to Spokane. You're 2 commissioners away of making decisions, policy decisions that may or may not be in the best interest of the city of Hayden. And so it really gives you an opportunity to have a seat at a table. The more people who participate, the more stable it likely would be. Every 2 years, commissioners, a board can change.
The funding kind of dictates the service area. What kind of funding is necessary to expand that service area?
So we do have a cost allocation model that we are putting together, and we have put together for fiscal year 22 and 23. So that I can get you numbers on that, on what a cost would look like to kind of build out to Rathdrum, what it would be if it was a fixed route service. Because like I talked about, with the fixed route service, you're required to put ADA paratransit around it. And ADA paratransit is where the costs kind of increase quite substantially. So there are different methods of which we can provide transportation out there without it being a traditional fixed route. And so then it would be a little bit cheaper to do those kind of systems and do runs like that. So if you do a commuter route and it only runs certain times of the day for certain lengths and it can't have a large number of stops, then it would be substantially cheaper than doing your traditional fixed route. But that is something that I can provide you for you, get you some information on that.
Please.
Anyone else?
Is this something that the cities would like to talk further about? Yeah, I, in essence, have a no from Dalton Gardens at this point.
For the county at this point on if it went to this type of a structure, of joint powers, you're still at the table?
Yes.
We still get your 64,000 or whatever it is. Yeah, it's just you're saying we're more in touch with each other?
You're now a part of a body that sets the policy for CityLink.
Oh, sorry, rather than just the county.
The county commissioners
Gotcha.
are doing that right now.
Thank you.
So but going to a joint powers will be more expensive because right now we have some, shared services within the county. And so, they use our legal, they use our grants auditors department, those kinds of things. So going to a joint powers would increase that cost because the joint powers would have to provide all of those things. So likely the funds, you would have to take more from each entity involved to make that joint powers happen. And so to the point of being more involved, we can always have discussions. Any entity is always welcome to come to the commissioners and have those talks if there's policy decisions or something like that that they want to be involved in. Doesn't necessarily have to increase the size of government and go to a full JPA. I did have a draft memorandum of understanding, super draft, but it just talks about, what our relationship is. And again, the agency's funding can always say, well, we're not going to participate anymore unless we have these conversations, which, it hasn't happened. I think we've worked well with the different agencies. And hooking up with Spokane, that's why I would like to have a discussion on a MOU, because we can enter into an MOU that says that the cities and whoever joins this MOU would have that say in connecting out of county, out of state, and it wouldn't just be 2 commissioners that would be able to make that decision. So I'm happy to distribute that for, future conversations. And again, it's just a super rough draft, just kind of like the JPA was.
Well, I certainly would like to see it because I know I spoke with the board about the JPA. And so this is a little bit of a surprise, pleasant or not. So again, I'm not sure I would agree that it requires an expansion as much. But yes, there are some services. KMPO is able to effectively do this cost efficiently for many of what they do, the services that they provide. So I think it really just comes down to, do you want to entertain sitting down with a board from each city representing this program? Or would you prefer to keep it more in the hands of the county and you don't have an interest in it? But that's really the question today, is to see if the cities want to continue the dialogue.
Mr. Commissioner, thank you for the opportunity to look at the draft agreement. I mean, the city's Coeur d'Alene is going into the agreement with CityLink, which the county is the legal authority to receive and dispense those federal funds for planning. From the administrator of the city of Coeur d'Alene's point of view, we don't know at all what Chad knows on the back of his hand versus transit and all those dollars. They seem to be quite encumbered. The feds have a lot of criteria with all those grants and everything going on. So from my desk, I'm not elected, I'm appointed, which can change any given day. This is working quite well. I do appreciate and would like to add that we would like to have maybe a representative on working through stops or addressing, and I don't even know them all, Chad, so I apologize, the ingress and egress to North Idaho. So I'm at the micro level of this. As he buys buses, kudos. The partnership here is phenomenal. And we have another, I'm going to use that word multiple times, I apologize. There's an EMS system that 25 years ago was so broken it was bankrupt. We could, as a city, have taken that on. Northern Lakes could have done that. Because we're urbanized, we have the run volume. We'd be happy to take over EMS. However, we have neighbors in Spirit Lake, Athol, and down in Harrison, that if we did that, they would not have the revenue to cover this county. So I look at CityLink that way, and this is Troy Tyneson, no elected, is saying it. But we'd love to enhance the program, more stops, build cooler bus stops, and do those things in our town. But you're able to oversee it and move it up to Hayden and Dalton and take it over to Post Falls. We're a little bit territorial. Nothing against Post Falls, a great city, but they're really well run. I don't know that we want to be in there. But if we had an opportunity to have input when they're looking at routes, when they're looking at changes, when they're talking about bringing our friends from Spirit Lake down when they write the big check, we'd be happy to be in on that. But the way I read the agreement, we were taking over assets and we were going to have liabilities, and we're not really good in that business at the city of Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah, well, I understand, and that's certainly one of the questions that, as a county commissioner, I get asked by constituents. We're taking on the liability, but the benefit is largely for the cities, and that is a question that is not an easy one to answer in that sense. It's not a state mandated service, and it is largely for the benefit of the cities. And as this place grows, more cities would obviously fall into the jurisdiction of it, as far as where the grant money could be used for, according to Chad. But it is one of those things, and that's why I say you're 2 commissioners away. Because when those questions get asked, at some point, someone's going to say, why are we doing this? And without a seat at the table, you're going to be at the whim of those 2 commissioners.
And there's checks and balances. The city of Coeur d'Alene has an annual agreement. And so not that we want to go there, but that is always a choice on the city. The other side to that is if I looked at the cash flow from property taxes to Kootenai County, I believe I'm going to see over 50% is coming from the urbanized area of your county that you get to govern. So we are contributing as constituents and taxpayers in the city to the county's revenue to provide the services. But I'm going to end on, without these partnerships, this thing doesn't exist, and we probably would have a much different impact if this thing was $300,000-$400,000 to make that city link work. So partnerships make it happen. And there's a gentleman across the way here that without the tribe's input and Kootenai Health's input, we're not going to have much of a city link system at all. So I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, 64% of the city populations are the ones that are served by CityLink right now. Ms. Ailport, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you earlier. Did you want to add something? Okay, great. And again, I mean, for me, just speaking for me, I'm happy to have bigger, broader partnerships with our partners, to have those discussions, yearly meetings, whatever needs to happen. At this point, though, I don't want to increase the size of government. I don't want to break something that's not broken right now. And again, just maintaining those dialogues, I think, is important. But if people want to, take a look at this draft MOU, then it would be something that, we can have conversations on. So, and again, it's just kind of brief, to the point, but I would point out the portion about connecting out of county or out of state, I think, is one that should be addressed and would be a good conversation to have. I do appreciate the fact that, to Mr. Thompson's point, the CityLink being under the county, it can be a little bit more neutral and see a bigger picture and be able to balance some of the needs from all the partners, instead of, Ms. Ailport and I are very familiar with a current JPA that we're trying to dissolve, and it's not a very happy situation. So if we can keep government small, then I think we benefit, because I think then the money goes towards the actual service and not towards anything else. Again, this is a draft, just meant to further the conversation if the cities felt like they wanted a bigger say in this. Rathdrum is included in this. I didn't really, just kind of, again, stab in the dark. So anything else on, yes?
Commissioner Matari, can you give us a sense of what you see as the benefits of a JPA over an MOU approach like this? From someone who's not a lawyer, these both sound like a mechanism to give cities a seat at the table, and I don't really see what the practical difference is in the two.
Well, without actually having a chance to really kind of go through this and think about it a little bit, again, the intention was to answer the question, why is the county taking on these liabilities like this? And, the beneficiaries are largely the cities. And while I recognize the fact that, 50 to 60% of the people in the cities comprise the tax revenue for the county, that's not all of them. And the state mandated services are things that everyone in the county gets the benefit of, and not just in specific pockets throughout the county. So that was the thinking behind it. And it was a start. So clearly, by initiating this and starting this, Commissioner Duncan felt the need to continue this and sees the value of it, not just from a JPA perspective, but from getting others involved. That hasn't happened before I came on board. So I was really just trying to start the conversation. There's a lot of things that haven't been happening, including these meetings prior to me coming on board. So, that's the whole intention of this, is to start getting people involved in these discussions, because what we do affects you and what you do affects us. So if anything, I'm glad to see Commissioner Duncan take the initiative on this.
Well, you do forget that it takes two commissioners to do quite a bit of stuff, and that has not always been my my privilege, so.
Well, that may be
I'm happy
true.
to have those conversations.
But it takes one commissioner to speak. And I've never heard that before. I haven't heard that as far as, I've been waiting to try to get these mayors' meetings going for a long time. I've been waiting to have this conversation because I've been saying this stuff for a while. So again, I applaud you for taking the initiative and putting this together, and I look forward to looking through it. And hopefully the other cities, you folks will want to participate in this.
So regardless of the specific mechanism, it does sound like a good idea for us to be getting together and having conversations. So thank you both for
that is the intention.
Yeah. And then, so my question is, are any of the cities signed up to do the strategic planning ride along? So Troy is, okay. Yeah.
I received a survey to vote or poll what the best time was, but I didn't see a specific sign up or scheduling of what the decision was from.
Okay, so based on your survey responses, he should have got an email. Oh, sorry.
So for Rathdrum, since they don't have services, we were including them in the Post Falls ride along, and that was going to be happening on Friday, this Friday. So I can get you the specifics on it, but it's going to be from 1 to 4 o'clock, and we're going to be starting from the City Hall at Post Falls, if you would like to participate in that as well. But I'll make sure that you have the information. You should have gotten it from Olivia with the Mets group. Did you? No? Okay. I'll make sure that.
We might have had an issue with the email. Is that what?
So we did change our domain.
Okay.
And so I noticed that this meeting, the mayor was getting email at his old email address, the mayor@rathdrum.org. We need to make sure that that is updated to mayor@rathdrum.gov, because we did have that change.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. I will call for public comment if there's nothing further on this topic. Sarah has a microphone for you, Ron.
I was glad to see a meeting like this. My name's Ron Hartman. I live in the county. I live south down 95 near Kidd Island Bay. And if you saw the presentation, there is no bus service down there. None. Yet, I'm a property owner, so I get to pay taxes to support this. Now, there's other things I don't have, but I don't pay taxes on. I don't have water and sewer by a city. I don't have full-time fire department by a city. I don't have curbside trash pickup by a city. I don't have parks by a city. But I get to pay for this transit system that isn't available to me. In my mind, the full cost should be proportioned out by the user. And those of us that aren't being provided this service should not have to pay a tax for something we don't receive. And I suggest that you get together and do this, because I've voiced this view to the commissioners before. And it's not right. It's not fair. And you guys need to step up and pay for this.
Any other comments, Jonathan? All right, 4:06, meeting adjourned. Thank you all so much for coming.